Hello and welcome to Transforming Tomorrow, the podcast from the Pentland Centre for Sustainability in Business at Lancaster University Management School. I'm Paul Turner.
And I'm Professor Joan Bebbington.
We're in Kuala Lumpur, it's 34 degrees, we're by the pool, and we're about to meet Jan's academic granddaughter.
Yes, for the next 4 weeks, Transforming Tomorrow is in Malaysia, bringing you a Southeast Asian perspective on sustainability. Today we're talking all about this mega diverse country, from its emerging economy and the efforts that its large petrochemical sector is undertaking to be more sustainable, the effects it has on the country's poor, and more accounting fun as well.
So yes, Jan, as we've just said, we're in Malaysia.
We are indeed.
It's a bit hotter, isn't it?
Yes. It's hot in a nice way, especially because we escaped a cold spring to come over here and have a conversation with a group of folk who have different perspectives, but also perspectives in common with folk we've talked to before.
Yeah, so obviously the first person we're going to speak to in Malaysia is someone from Northern Ireland who graduated with their PhD from Newcastle. So, you know, they're the first person you think of, isn't it, when you come here?
Well, it's an international community, and I'm really pleased that with our first guest. She is my academic granddaughter.
I'm worried that an academic granddaughter suggests she's going to have picked up all the bad habits you've got and things like this, and you're going to have passed on. Because that's what grandparents tend to do. They pass on all the bad habits
No,
to
just
children.
the fun habits.
Fun habits.
And the rest of it was her mother's fault.
Right, that definitely sounds about right, yes. And I also worry that maybe our guest has got all of your same attitudes towards accounting and benchmarking and things like that. I don't know if we'll find that out or not, but
Possibly.
yes, today we're joined by Dr. Anne-Marie Sidhu, who is a chartered accountant with an expertise in sustainability reporting, and she works with business and government on meeting the challenges of SDGs. Hello, Anne-Marie.
Hello, Jan and Paul. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, you're very welcome, and thank you for welcoming us to your country, because it's such a lovely place to be at this time of year. It's not very often at this time of year I can, go outside and just bake. Or boil, or broil. Broil. What one of them? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself then, Anne-Marie, and how you came to be here in Kuala Lumpur and you're working on corporate sustainability?
As you've alluded to, I have a Northern Irish accent. I grew up in Northern Ireland, in quite a rural area, County Fermanagh, a beautiful area with lakes and forests and whatnot. And I've always really been interested in nature. How did I end up doing accountancy? That's a really good question. I think I probably fell into it as a result of my family making suggestions as to go into banking, finance, accounting, and so on. And while I was at university, I became very actively involved with animal welfare, blood sports, anti-blood sports, animal rights, and so on. In fact, I was the treasurer of the Anti-Blood Sports Society. So I've always been very aware of the environment, animals, and how we should treat them, and so on. Of course, being in practice in Northern Ireland, I mean, I joined one of the big four. I think in those days it would have been probably the big 8 or the big 6, I'm not too sure. And there wasn't really much opportunity. In fact, I was told this is not in keeping with the profession, so you better stop doing that kind of thing, because there was a little bit of activism going on. So I met my husband at university, and I ended up coming to Malaysia then in the late 1990s. I continued to work for that big four firm. They transferred me over. But it wasn't until the early 2000s I met somebody that Jan probably knows, Reg Matthews from,
yes.
At that time he was the head of accounting in CSU in Bathurst in Australia. And we started talking about environmental accounting and so on. And it piqued my interest. And then I thought, okay, at that time I had gone into academia and I thought I'd do a master's in environmental accounting. But I thought, okay, I don't want to do accounting. I want to do something related to business. So I ended up doing environmental and business management. And because of my husband's job, we actually ended up moving around a lot. So I didn't really have much of an opportunity to practice. So we ended up in Newcastle many years later as a result of being a trailing spouse. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do a PhD in sustainability, something to do with sustainability, accounting, reporting, and so on.
And that's where the granddaughter, grandparent thing comes from, because your PhD students, so you work very closely with them, and they're like your academic children. But then, if your PhD student supervises someone else, that's your academic granddaughter. So we have the wonderful Jane Gibbon, who was then at Newcastle and previously at Northumbria, in common. And so we've known each other from that connection, because your academic families sort of keep in touch with each other.
So I could imagine you could very easily have an academic great even granddaughter at the end of all of it.
You've just gone off my list of favourite people again. Every time you get on it, you're off it again.
I'm just saying that you can have an academic granddaughter a lot younger in life than you could have an academic daughter.
Yes, that's true. That's true. It's only about 4 or 5 years between the generations, so that's true. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, I take
great.
it back.
You could go back many generations.
Well, it was so nice to hear Reg Matthews' name mentioned, because I haven't. I mean, there was a bit of an outpouring of sort of some novel kind of accounting, and then it all disappeared. And there were a few people that kept it alive during the wilderness, of which Reg Matthews was the absolute example. And he was so gregarious; he would talk to lots of people around it, and so he was, if you like, the start of a whole bunch of new things that brought new people to it and actually allowed the field to thrive again. So thank you for saying his name. I hadn't thought about him for ages. So when we think about sustainability, accounting, reporting, all of these things brought in together, what do you think is needed in order for both businesses and also government and the professions to actually succeed in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and melding them together with accounting and reporting?
Well, I think in the Malaysian context, one of the first things is awareness. We could look at the government agencies, government ministries, we have corporate, which to my mind is made up of both public listed companies and SMEs. SMEs have a huge role to play. If you look at this country, 98% of the economy is from SMEs, and we really need to get them on the train, as it were. They actually employ 50% of the workforce here as well. The other one would be the banking sector, financial institution sector, and of course civil society. I think we need to have all of them coming together. At the moment, is that happening? Yes, it is happening. I mean, corporates, Malaysia, PLCs have been looking at sustainability reporting since 2015. They have to, it's mandatory. Our Bursa, which is our stock exchange, has made it mandatory for them to do this reporting. It's not mandatory for SMEs. The government has been actively involved through various agencies, to look at net zero, decarbonisation. We have many roadmaps dealing with energy transition. And then they've also got, with the central bank, they've asked the banks to be involved in helping to green business activities through, different greening finance initiatives. They've actually put money into a low carbon transition facility, something like 2 billion. We've had banks, some of the big banks, the big names have actually decided that they're going to go into green financing. So they play a huge role in the Malaysian context. And then, of course, when it comes to civil society, we're a little bit disjointed, I would say. We have only recently set up the UN SDG Centre. We have a UN SDG Council, which is chaired by the Prime Minister. And under that, you have various working groups. And one of those working groups is civil society organisations. And there's about 30 well-known NGOs in there. Yeah, but that's only just started, like in less than a year ago. Yeah, so we need all of them to work together, because at the moment, everybody's doing their own thing. Yeah.
And for the SDGs, because you mentioned quite a few of them there in terms of energy transitions, etc., are there like distinctive either environmental or social aspects for Malaysia that come to the fore when we're thinking about the general agenda items? So everyone's on an energy transition, and I know there's sort of like greening the financial system and thinking about nature is big here as well. But are there other really distinctive Malaysian flavours?
Yeah, well, I would think that social related UN SDGs are very important, because we still have quite a large B40. B40 stands for the bottom 40%. And to be in the bottom 40, you're only earning something like 4,800 ringgit a month for a family, which is nothing. That's about £800.
Is that referring to the bottom 40% globally then?
No, here in Malaysia, the B40 for Malaysia. Mm-hmm. So definitely we have issues there. We talk about UN SDG 1 and 2, which is dealing with poverty and hunger. We have probably eradicated, supposedly the statistics say we have eradicated hunger is down to below 1%. But if you go out to some of the areas in Malaysia, you will see that there are families that are struggling, especially with the cost of living. So this is something that's tied into the energy transition, because in Malaysia, oil and gas is heavily subsidized at the petrol pumps. So when you remove those subsidies, which are worth billions, it will affect that particular group. So in fact, there should be more equity in terms of people who can afford to pay for oil and gas. They should be made to pay, but everybody gets a subsidy, you know. So social issues is one area, I think, and of course education is another one. I think we need to spend more time in embedding sustainability into, we have a little bit of it in schools. I think universities need to be doing more of it. And I'm not talking about having standalone sustainability programs. I'm talking about embedding it into the whole curriculum, you know, for whether it's for engineering, accounting and finance or whatever. Yeah.
I was really interested in your example about the fuel prices, because that really sort of speaks to the just transition issue, that to decarbonise is one thing, but how do you decarbonise in a way that doesn't affect the poor more adversely than those who've got a bit more money about them?
Absolutely. And this is something the government is looking at the moment. Our oil and gas, our national company, oil and gas company is actually looking into this at the moment. How do we remove subsidies but still allow the B40, for example, to have access to energy that is affordable? This is and that's obviously a really difficult, especially when a society has been living on subsidized energy for so long. Yeah.
And it's interesting there that we often talk on this podcast about the wide range of sustainability. It's not just about decarbonisation, etc. But this shows how decarbonising can have an effect on all those other SDGs, especially in different economies than we might be used to back home in Western Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another area in Malaysia is Malaysia is one of the 12th mega diverse countries in the world. Biodiversity is really important, and I don't think it's got the traction that it should be getting. I mean, we seem to have, in fact, the government has a climate first approach. That's very clear. So what about biodiversity? What about our water security? That's another area that maybe we need to be emphasizing more. Malaysia is fortunate. I think we're probably the 5th or 6th. We have the most rainfall globally. The problem is we have these different weather patterns. So sometimes during the year we have some of our states which have droughts and we don't have water. So we have to go on water rationing and so on. So water security should be another priority. It isn't just about energy. And of course, as I said, biodiversity as well. Malaysia has pristine forests, particularly in East Malaysia. Of course, we rely on palm oil, we rely on rubber plantations and so on. So, it's quite difficult, I suppose, for the government, if you think about it. On the one hand, we're not a developed nation. So we need to have economic growth. We need to bring people up socioeconomically. But on the other hand, we're also depending on, the GDP to grow with a lot of these products, We have palm oil, which is one of our major exports. So how do you balance, making sure that you take care of the needs of the people, but at the same time you make sure that biodiversity isn't affected and so on. So it can be quite challenging. And which one comes first?
Many of our listeners might never have been to Malaysia. Certainly before we made this trip, Jan, I'd never been to Malaysia, and they might not necessarily know what it's like here. We're in Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital city, which, looking out of the windows of the building we're in at the moment, our hotel, you can see many tower blocks around us, both commercial and residential, which might be what you expect. What I didn't expect was all the lush greenery that was here, from the drive-in from the airport and then even all around the city. You've got palm trees everywhere. You've got a very tropical environment. And whilst I had been looking at weather apps repeatedly whilst I was here, I couldn't quite believe the state of the thunderstorms. And you talk about the amount of rain that you get. We're currently not in a monsoon season or a wet season, but there's still an awful lot of rain that comes down here.
Yeah, the monsoon season is supposed to be at the end of the year. So it usually happens around October to December. And then this time, February, it starts getting drier. It's usually going into the dry season, yeah. And that's one of the things we've seen in terms of climate change is flooding, major flooding. We've had major flooding in 2021, where people have actually died. And over 6 billion ringgit worth of damage was done. We've had again flooding in 2022, 2023. In fact, a report was done by the World Bank and the Central Bank just recently, just in 2024, saying that Malaysia because we need to focus, other countries, like if you look at Europe, they're focusing on mitigation. We have to focus on adaptation because we need to get ready for all of these floods, yeah? And the World Bank and Bank Negara, which is our central bank, are saying that Malaysia, 4% of our GDP is going to be affected because of floods. And then they also say if we don't take care of our ecosystem, 6% of our GDP will go. So it's really something that is, it's hitting us in the face, we can't run away from it,
And I suppose in some ways that's quite different from maybe a more European-centric view of sustainable development, and the kind of folks that we've spoken to before on this podcast, which is why the great advantage of taking it even further out on the road, is that the nature's already been denuded, so there's not a sense of particular worry about that, although people are trying to restore ecosystems. And as you say, it is on the mitigation, with adaptation only just now dawning on folk. And some of that adaptation is much more slow and about technical and about soil loss or whatever. But if it's every afternoon in a city, then if you like, it's much more on public consciousness and much more to the forefront of thinking. It's quite a particular change, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's affecting the everyday.
Yeah.
The everyday for many of us. Even, you're in the middle of KL. It has been flooded a few months ago.
Yeah.
And cars are just floating down the middle of the road, So this is a reality. It's not something that's far away, for many of the citizens here.
In keeping with the thinking about the EU and Europe, but then also what's happening in Malaysia, some of the legislation being passed within the EU are about due diligence in supply chains. And unlike other countries, Malaysia still has a productive sector in terms of industry and manufacturing. Do those kind of things that are being talked about in the EU and regulated affect people's thinking in Malaysia about how they're going to conduct business?
It may not affect the man on the street, as it were, but it definitely affects businesses. Probably the most recent one would have been CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism.
Oh, yeah.
Many companies very upset about this. It hasn't come into play. It's not coming into play fully until 2026. But, they had to get their documentation ready and so on. And they're basically saying, you have a tariff on steel, aluminium, these kind of exports. Because you must remember, Malaysia is a major exporting country. Our GDP is coming from exports, and we export electronics, steel, agricultural products, and so on. So CBAM major. Then you have CSRD, which is a Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which is where the Europeans are doing the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. So if you have like subsidiaries here from EU multinationals, they're definitely coming and asking them questions. Where's your ESG data? We already have clients that they're looking into this. We've even done training on ESRSs, so it's unusual for a Malaysian company coming and asking you, can we have training on European sustainability reporting standards? But that's happening. The other area, you mentioned due diligence, which is, you're probably alluding to the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, which isn't fully in play yet. They're going to give about 3 years for implementation. Definitely a big impact here because we are part of a global supply chain. And even when you talk about supply chains, we've even had issues with this long before CSDDD came in. For example, our rubber glove industry had a lot of issues back in 2021 when the Customs Border Patrol in the US refused to allow our products to go into the US because of alleged, I'm going to say alleged, although they were alleged forced labor issues or modern slavery issues. So at least 6 companies were caught under that, and it took the government about 2 years to try and sort out that issue. We've had cases where, for example, you've had, and I will mention the company, it's public information, Dyson, Dyson, UK company? Yeah, headquartered now in Singapore. They had a subcontractor in Malaysia, Johor Bahru, where they were manufacturing all the lovely things that they manufacture and export. This company, which was a subsidiary of a public listed company in Malaysia, had migrant workers, also allegations of forced labor. And the workers actually took a case against this company, or not this company, but against Dyson. Okay, now Dyson was not involved. Yeah, so you can see here when it comes to the supply chains, you can have where, and this is the speak that GRI uses, they talk about you're either, you are actually causing the issue, whatever that issue might be, in this case forced labor, you are contributing to the issue because of your actions, or you're directly linked. So in this case, you can see that Dyson was only directly linked. and they sued them in the UK court. Of course, the UK judges said, "Why are you coming here? You have courts in Malaysia, go back there." But actually, they've had an appeal, and now the judges have said, "Yes, go ahead." So that's ongoing at the moment. And that's not the only case. There was one with our local producers here exporting to the US, and the workers here are suing the US companies.
Oh, wow.
Kimberly-Clark is one of them. I can't remember some of the other ones. But so you can see here where supply chain's incredibly important. And it's not, if you're just directly linked, if something's going to go wrong, it'll probably go wrong in the supply chain, not necessarily in your own operations, you know?
I think if there's one thing we learned from the episodes we've done on modern slavery and on supply chains, it's that everything is linked, and you need to be mindful of what's going on,
Absolutely.
not just within the walls of your own company, but in all those suppliers that soar up and down the supply chain. Because with the reporting regulations that are being put in place, you're going to be found out.
And when it comes to being an export-led country, and you're in a global supply chain context, then you are linked to regulation wherever it happens. So have we ever told our listeners about the carbon border adjustment mechanism?
It sounds like the kind of thing that if you started speaking about it, Jen, I switched off, went and made a cup of tea, and came back when you'd finished. But no, I don't believe we have spoken about it.
Well, a very short aside. The idea, and it's again a European initiative, is, and Europe, of course, can regulate its own markets. If you are making any product that's more energy intensive than what it would be made in Europe, then you pay an extra carbon tax. So hence it's like a tariff on raw material imports. And I heard somebody who was very involved in the policy making speak about it. And he was saying, and I hope this is for Malaysian business, this comes true. He said he hopes and anticipates that very few people, if any, will ever pay the tax, because the fact that the tax mechanism is there is then driving and helping decarbonisation elsewhere. And that was the intent of it, even though it could
so it's driving, but it's driving things such as carbon credits, and I have my own views on carbon credits, but and I won't quote them here, but you know, it is creating a market for that kind of thing as well, you know, so it has its pros and cons.
Yeah, we have someone in the management school who we haven't had on as the guest, a guy called Emre Terim, who's written some papers about carbon credits and trading them and the carbon markets and the pros and cons there. I think there's fair to say there's definitely a whole lot of cons in there as well, and in all senses of the word con as well. Now I dare say the way that carbon credits can be used, it's interesting. And I guess if you've got a country like here that the petrochemical industry is so big, we're a mile away from the Petronas Towers. Petronas, that's a massive company here in Malaysia. In there they have a whole museum science-y type place, which is all about learning about the great things that can be done thanks to. So, you know,
I'm going to go and look.
Oh,
I think it looks really interesting.
I think it's meant for kids, but you go for it. You'll fit right in. But yeah, when you've got these rules, it's going to be harder for maybe countries like this to adapt to them when you've got such a petrochemical based economy in lots of ways.
But Petronas is actually working. They have a plan to move away jointly with Tenaga Nasional, which is our only energy supplier, to decarbonize, number one, and also to move more towards renewable energy. The solar industry is solar panel industry is really picking up in Malaysia, and the government have come up with incentives even for private individuals to have solar panels on their home. I mean, we're a hot country, we've got sun, so to put solar panels, we even have the idea of having there's one place where we have floating solar panels on water bodies, because of course land is an issue. So all of these initiatives are actually underway.
And we spoke about this with Alona Armstrong about a year ago on the podcast, and the various uses of on land and on water solar panels and the environmental benefits that can bring as well. And, you know, both in terms of nature and in terms of like heat absorption and stuff. And yeah, and we've spoken before we started recording the podcast about the potential there might be lots of rare earth metals here in Malaysia as well. And if you're going to be becoming a big producer of solar panels, then rare earth metals, I dare say, are going to be quite valuable for you to be able to make those solar panels in the first place.
Absolutely, but that comes back to what I said before about we need to grow, economically grow, we need to lift people up. But on the other hand, you know, we cannot destroy our biodiversity, and there are some issues surrounding that. We definitely need clearer regulations on this whole area. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a
Malaysia.
balance to be
Yeah.
kept there. You don't want to do so much good by switching over to solar panels from fossil fuels, only to have destroyed all the rainforests, etc., in order to dig up the rare metals that you needed to make the solar panels. It's not easy, this sustainability, Lark, is it?
No,
It's not. No,
Not
absolutely not.
really. And we've talked about how Europe affects Malaysia, but what examples or lessons do you think Malaysia can tell European UK companies? So what things could you pass back to our listeners?
Well, if you look at some of our companies, bigger companies like in the banking sector, some of the big plantation companies, the way they approach sustainability, it's not like a tick box exercise. It's more like they look at it as something they have to embed into their strategy. They're looking long term because they know that they're not going to be around if they don't do this. That's one of the things. So I think there's some lessons, very valuable lessons in there. Another area would be that Malaysia, we are, in terms of Islamic finance, we're at the forefront
Yeah.
globally. And now we've started issuing Islamic bonds. It's called Sukuk. So we have green financing through, because it's based on principles of fairness and justice, which are very aligned with the UN SDGs. So I think Malaysia would be a good example of where a country where they take, yes, which is what effectively is a Western concept, sustainable development and UN SDGs, and then they sort of like align it with the values or the principles that you have in this country. Another area which is probably more negative and something I mentioned before is you have to get your house in order. Something may happen, you don't wait for regulations. We saw that with our rubber glove companies just before COVID or around COVID time. That just came out of, and that was an outside pressure. The US just decided, and it was because of an NGO that brought this up, So people are watching you, people are scrutinizing what you're doing. You need to be careful when you're reporting. I mean, this comes back to the issue of greenwashing. We do have, at the moment, there is no requirement to do assurance in Malaysia. It's a recommendation by the stock exchange if you're a listed company, but it's not a requirement, although we're moving in that direction. I think by 2027 it will become mandatory, at least for carbon emissions, that they'll have to be assured. So one of the things I think we can learn from those kind of episodes, is that your supply chains are really important. And you need to get your house in order, because if anything is going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong there. It's going to go wrong in a subsidiary, in another ASEAN country, not necessarily in Malaysia. It's going to go wrong somewhere in your supply chain with your suppliers, So that to me would be a big lesson, yeah?
So much that ties in with so many things that we've spoken about already and that we're going to be speaking about in future episodes. So you talk about how there's stuff going on about how that stuff is getting embedded within how companies act, but how it's not yet regulation. It ties back to what we did about how norms become like rules and laws and etc. You talked about sustainability not being a tick box exercise. And it's interesting, we're going to be talking in one of our upcoming episodes about PRIME, which is the Principles of Responsible Management Education. And that started out as very much show us what you're doing and write it in a report and just to actually emphasize what you're doing so it's built into what you're doing. That's actually going more towards the, now we don't want, that's a bit too complicated to assess. Let's have a tick box exercise. And we'll be discussing that, I dare say, when we discuss that in one of our future episodes here in Malaysia with Stephen Homer.
Yes, I think we shall. What I really liked about what you said is that, and it's not actually about the reporting. The reporting comes out the far end of a process. And I suppose it's a distinction between management accounting and then reporting. And I know that we were chatting about this before the podcast as well, is that from how you've described it, it's more embedded because the manufacturing sites are here, the need to account, the need to have data, the need to be in control of your operations. So that's pretty encouraging, because if you're only reporting, then I think it ends up, disassociated as a sort of an activity that's not connected to anything. But if you're actually involved in the manufacturing of proper things with proper people, then I think it does end up being much more substantive in that respect.
Yeah, but I should say we're not talking about all companies. We're talking about some of the big players, yeah? Where they see the need and they're getting ahead of the curve. We still have a lot of listed companies that, because we have something like 900 listed companies.
Yeah.
So we have many of the lower tier companies. They if you look at their reporting and compare it to somebody in the top 100, there's a big disparity, So some of them need to do a lot more work. And as I also said, the SMEs, they form a huge percentage of our economy. So we really need to get them on board. But one of the good things I've seen working with clients is that some of the SMEs, they see the value in that. They know they have to because they're exporting, for example, and they know that somebody's going to come and start asking them about their ESG performance and so on. But I'm not by any means saying all companies are embedding sustainability, but some of the bigger ones
be
are.
moving to
Yes,
Malaysia forthwith.
I almost want you to say Keystone Actors here, Jan, just because I feel that every episode you'd say if the big boys are doing it, and the smaller companies going to have to follow their example if they want to keep having their piece of the pie, because otherwise the big boys are going to take all the action, especially if there's people from other countries coming in who have these regulations in place that maybe the little ones don't previously pay attention to.
And if they're doing that, one really hopes that there is some sort of SME development initiatives, because otherwise a big company says to a small company, and now you're going to do this, but I'm not going to pay you for the time or the mechanisms or whatever. So it has to be again just.
There are. For example, the stock exchange has set up this. It's called GVC, Greening the Value Chain. So it's actually helping SMEs to enable sustainability practices within SMEs so that they can trade with listed companies, and that's within the country itself. We're not talking about exports, okay? We also have, many initiatives. For example, one of our ministries, in fact, they came up with the very first ministry that has a sustainability report last year because they asked us to assure it. They've actually come up with, because they deal with manufacturing companies, manufacturing SMEs, and they've actually come up with what they call is IESG, which is actually a simplified version of sustainability reporting standards. Because the idea is that, if you use something like GRI, it's for really large companies, which is not true. We know GRI can be used by small companies too, but and then we have other initiatives by the Capital Markets Malaysia. They've come up with simplified ESG disclosure requirements. So there are moves to do this to help the SMEs. But I think the main problem for many of the SMEs, they need to see the business case. And I know we don't sometimes like talking about this idea of business case. We should be doing it out of the goodness of our hearts. And that's just not going to happen. So they need to know what value is in implementing sustainability in their businesses, and sometimes that is not so clear to them. They see it as a cost.
As we alluded to back at the start, you are Jan's academic granddaughter. So before we come to the end, I just want to know about your experience with regards to sustainability reporting, sustainability accounting over the course of your career. What you've seen there that's changed over that time, how you've seen it develop, and what your thoughts are where it might go in the future.
Okay. When I started thinking or looking at this way back, I won't say how long ago, then you'll figure out my age, but many decades ago or a few decades ago, Malaysian companies were only focusing on CSR. It was just basically something they gave money to or went and painted an orphanage or built a community hall or something like that. There was very little discussion about their actual activities or, it definitely wasn't part of their operations. And I think I would say in the last 10 years, this space has sort of grown rapidly. And I think it's because of the stock exchange here making it mandatory, that you have to come up with a sustainability statement. So really rapid progress. And I think it's become part of the public's vernacular as well. Now, what a member of the public might think about sustainability or how they might view it might be very different from a company, but it's something that is it's out there in terms of the press. You see the articles that are published, the business press. You open up the press any day, you will find lots of information on sustainability. You look at certain professions like the legal profession, the accounting profession. Like for example, our last two conferences, the local profession is called the Malaysian Institute of Accountants. The themes were on sustainability. A lot of the training they're doing is on sustainability. The government are very active with all the different initiatives that they're having. Corporates, we have a lot of support from Bursa, from the Securities Commission, from Capital Markets Malaysia, even helping SMEs. So in the last 10 years, it's growing. Where is it going to go in the future? I think a lot of it is going to be dictated by outside pressures. We have our own agenda internally, but a lot of it is coming from the outside. We see what other countries are doing, what Hong Kong is doing, Singapore is doing, for example, just to give you an example, here in Malaysia, the stock exchange works very closely with FTSE for Good, which is one of the ranking agency or rating agencies. And in fact, from 2024, it said that all companies that are listed must have some sort of rating. Okay, so they're all going through that process. So we have an index where they issue, rankings for June, I think it is in December. So they're working very closely. So they want to see what their ESG performance is, whether it's good or bad. They want to see it. Yeah. So you can see that kind of, these are all outside influences that are coming in, it's a small world, I suppose. So we can't, and because we're an export nation, we have no choice but to look to outside. Yeah.
In this series of the podcast, we've been asking everyone as our sort of lucky last question is what's inspiring them, because it's very easy to get bogged down and sort of feel a bit overwhelmed by all the various challenges. So I wonder for you, in Malaysia in particular, in sustainability, accounting, reporting, and in advising businesses about it, what are you finding inspiring at the moment?
For me, it's the small organizations, the ones that do not have to do anything on sustainability. And I've come across some of them have come to us, but I've come across some where, I'll give you an example. This young man inherits a manufacturing, it's wood manufacturing, furniture manufacturing, which exports from his parents. And he decides, I want it to be sustainable. I will mention the name. It's called the Green Factory. You can go and look it up. And he's actually taking old furniture, repurposing it, recycling it, even the ends, making it into things like ashtrays and, card holders. And he has a very young team of people, and they're all really passionate. We've actually trained some of them on GRI because they wanted to know about GRI reporting, even though they don't have to do reporting. So I've come across so many. I went to a university conference where they had all the young engineers coming up with all these projects, sustainability projects. And some of the ideas are amazing. So to me, the next generation, our generation have really messed things up, I think, and if you look at people even older than me, when you talk to them about sustainability, they often see it as something that has to be done, directors and so on. But I think the younger generation, they will change things for definite. And some of the things that they're doing, for example, I came across a small company, they're making garbage bags. And you know what they were making? They were making it out of starch. It was totally biodegradable, and they work because I bought them. They're doing all sorts of things that are really meaningful without having to do them. Regulations not forcing them to do that. So I see that's what inspires me. Sometimes there are things I see that doesn't inspire me, but that definitely inspires me. And the young people, the enthusiasm they have.
Thank you for joining us. That's been a wonderful conversation, and it's always nice to meet a new member of Jan's family.
It's good to meet you also.
I have to say, as far as academic granddaughters go, you could have done a far worse.
Oh, very proud. We're very proud, your father and I. There were some new terms in there which I thought were really interesting. So the fact that the U40 is just something that clearly must be talked about. That seemed like a shorthand that's used, that's understood, which we haven't had anyone else on the podcast to speak in that way before.
In the UK, we'd just say people living in poverty. We wouldn't refer to them as the 40%, the U40. I guess because in our country, you don't want to put a percentage figure on it because politicians would have a field day with that if you were in opposition. But here it seems to be more ingrained, if you will, that is a concept. Which may speak to the part of the world we're in, that there are such big divides between the haves and the have-nots.
But also that it's a divide that needs to be addressed as clearly within the context of things as well. So I found that really engaging.
CBAM. CBAM. I thought that was a sound effect from Batman. But no, it turns out that that's a thing as well. Yes, not that we haven't talked about before, but I loved that. CBAM.
Yeah. But there was quite a European sense in terms of the kind of, and a North American one as well. And if you're an exporting country, then you are open to other countries' regulation because you have to get your goods and products into those other countries.
Yes, because it wasn't just CBAM. There were lots of other acronyms that were thrown out there. And I was particularly pleased that Anne-Marie did a good job of explaining what all of them meant as she was saying them, because otherwise I would have had an alphabet soup written down on my piece of paper from this episode. Yeah, and it is really fascinating to see how companies react over here to what is happening back home in Europe, and regulations that are coming in that affect them directly or indirectly, or sometimes don't even affect them, but they recognise that they need to do something because it might affect them in the future.
And then for me, the third and final thing that I found really quite exciting is the extent to which some of the companies, not all by any stretch of the imagination, but some particularly of the big ones, this isn't a tick box. They're actually doing something really holistic.
Yes, yeah, and ingraining it within their strategy, and the fact that I think this must be a lot of the companies that Anne-Marie is working with must have that attitude, that they're not just there for, we've got this regulation that says we need to do X% of our work conforms to this particular regulation. Can you just sort that out for us? They're actually looking to do it properly.
No, I thought that was very encouraging. So how are we going to be encouraged in the next episode?
We're not just here for one show, we're going to do a few more, and we're heading out to Sunway University, which is on the outskirts of Kuala Lumpur, and it's a partner university with Lancaster, and we're going to be speaking to a few different academics there, researchers in sustainability who've got so many new and varied insights. And the first one that we're going to be speaking to is Mahendran Sangharan Nair, who is a very high-ranking prof at somewhere, and he's going to be talking to us about lots of interesting things.
That'll be good, and you'll need to now be on your best behaviour.
I am on my best behaviour. You want to see me on my worst behaviour. Yes, he's going to be talking to us about projects that they have going back to that 40% group, projects that are very much affecting them, but also sustainability across the region more generally too. It's going to be a very fascinating talk. So thank you very much for joining us on our first podcast from here in Malaysia. We will have more to come. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening. I'm Paul Turner.
And I'm Professor Jan Bevington.